The Kalambo River has always been a place of water and movement. In the wet season, its level rises, spilling into back channels and shallow lagoons. In the dry season, it contracts into narrower flows, exposing mudbanks and sandbars. The ancient wooden structure sits within this shifting boundary, close enough to the water to be useful, but raised above its deepest floods. The fitted logs may have formed the base of a platform. A flat, stable surface would keep stored food or tools dry when the ground became muddy. It could provide a place to prepare plant fibers or butcher game without standing in waterlogged soil. For those who stayed near the river, it might even serve as a resting or lookout point, clear of insects and damp.
Alternatively, the joint might anchor part of a walkway. In a floodplain, the ground can be treacherous, soft clay that grips the feet, or channels hidden beneath shallow water. Laying logs in a sequence, supported by crosspieces, could create a dry path between campsites or from shore to fishing spots.
If the join was part of a frame, its function might have been vertical rather than horizontal. It could hold upright poles for a shelter, a drying rack, or a simple fence to keep animals out of a work area. Such uses would require stability, and the notch ensures that stability by preventing movement in more than one direction. Whatever the exact form, the location is significant. The river offers not just water and fish, but a concentration of plant and animal resources: reeds for weaving, clay for coating, wood for fuel and tools, game animals drawn to drink. It is a place where human presence is sustained by the landscape itself. Archaeological evidence from other regions suggests that riverbank sites were favored repeatedly across human history. Waterways are natural corridors of movement, linking territories and allowing the transport of goods and ideas. In the Middle Pleistocene, they may also mark boundaries between groups, meeting places, or seasonal hubs. The presence of a wooden structure here may indicate a degree of settlement unusual for the time. Most early humans were mobile, moving to follow resources. A fixed feature hints that this spot was returned to often enough to justify construction that would outlast a single visit. Still, and the evidence is fragmentary, no post holes or long alignments of logs have been found nearby, though they could have been lost to erosion or later floods. The surviving join may be the remnant of something larger, or it may always have been a single, functional piece. The preservation of the wood provides more than just a glimpse of ancient behavior. It offers insight into the environment itself. Analysis of the wood species can tell us what trees grew here 500,000 years ago, and in turn, what the climate was like. The species identified from Kalambo indicate a mix of woodland and riparian forest, consistent with a relatively moist phase in the regional climate. In such condition, as the river would be rich in fish, the surrounding land in browse for animals, and the forest in edible plants and useful materials. It is easy to see why humans would linger here, building something to make life on the bank more comfortable or efficient. From a global view, this period falls within an interglacial, a warmer interval between longer, colder glacial phases. While ice sheets persist in the far north, conditions in Central Africa are stable enough to allow the growth of dense vegetation along major rivers. These stable periods may have provided windows of opportunity for human innovation, as groups could rely on predictable resources long enough to invest in more complex constructions. Yet the record remains sparse. Kalambo is one of only a handful of sites in the world preserving wooden structures from this age. Elsewhere, even if similar works were made, they have vanished without a trace. Wood is ephemeral. Only under special conditions does it survive the reach of decay. The joint at Kalambo is therefore not just an isolated curiosity, it is a rare key to a hidden aspect of early human life. It shows that even in deep prehistory, humans were shaping their surroundings in ways we usually associate with much later periods. The river continues its course today, running past the site and over the edge of the falls. Mist rises into the air, just as it did when the logs were first fitted together. The sound of falling water still fills the valley. And on the high terrace, the place where the join once lay is now an empty cut in the soil, the wood removed for study, its impression left behind as a shadow in earth. 500,000 years ago, it was part of something that stood here, a small change in the land made by human thought and hands. That change, preserved by chance, now carries its story far beyond the riverbank. Wood is among the most fragile of archaeological materials. In the open, it weathers and splits. In damp soil rich with oxygen, fungi and bacteria break it down to fibers, then dust. Only in unusual conditions, where oxygen is scarce and the environment remains stable, can wood survive for hundreds of thousands of years. At Kalambo, the preservation is owed to the river itself. Seasonal floods deposited fine layers of silt over the structure. As these layers built up, they sealed the logs away from air and sunlight. The soil stayed waterlogged, and the low oxygen conditions slowed the growth of decay organisms almost to a halt. This process, though unplanned, worked much like the deliberate preservation methods used in later human history, storing wooden objects in bogs, covering them in clay, or submerging them in water. Here, it was the river's own shifting sediment that created the seal. Other famous waterlogged finds, such as the wooden spears of Schöningen in Germany, date to a similar era but are rare exceptions. In most cases, wooden artifacts older than a few thousand years are unknown simply because they did not survive. Kalambo joins that small list of extraordinary preservations that expand our view of what early humans could do. When the logs were uncovered, their surface still carried the textures of grain and tool marks. But exposure to air began a new process of change, drying, shrinking, and cracking. Conservators kept the wood wet, wrapping it in damp cloth and sealing it from evaporation. Later, it would be treated with stabilizing substances to prevent collapse. The survival of such material is not just a stroke of luck, it is also a window into the environmental history of the site. From the species of wood, researchers can infer the type of forest that grew here, from pollen grains trapped in the surrounding sediment. They can reconstruct the plants of the ancient floodplain. At the time of the structure's creation, the Kalambo River Valley likely supported a mix of evergreen and deciduous trees, along with dense undergrowth in the wetter areas. Large herbivores would have kept some areas more open, creating a mosaic of habitats within walking distance of the bank. Preservation also allows for microscopic study. The growth rings in the wood reveal whether the tree grew in a stable climate or one with marked seasonal variation. The spacing of rings, the density of fibers, and the presence of insect tunnels all add details to the environmental picture. Yet even here, much remains beyond reach. We cannot know how long the structure stood before being buried. We cannot know whether the logs were freshly cut or reused from earlier works. The absence of surrounding structures may mean it was a single, self-contained piece, or that others once stood nearby and were lost to erosion. From a planetary perspective, the forces that preserve the logs are the same that constantly reshape Earth's surface. sediments move downhill under gravity, carried by water, wind, and ice. Rivers shift their channels, erasing some places while covering others, over hundreds of thousands of years. Such changes can bury entire landscapes intact. For the humans who built the structure, these processes were invisible in the long term but familiar in the short. They would have seen the river rise and fall, seen logs swept downstream, seen fresh banks form where old channels closed. Their decision to place the jointed logs where they did may have been guided by this intimate knowledge of how the river behaved. The conditions that preserved the structure also preserved other small traces. Wood shaving, seeds, and fragments of bone have been found in the same sediment layer. Each adds a thread to the fabric of life here. What was eaten, what was worked, what passed by unnoticed. In the modern laboratory, these threads are studied with care. Radiocarbon dating is not possible for material this old, so researchers use methods like optically stimulated luminescence to date the surrounding sediments. This measures when grains of quartz last saw sunlight, placing the burial of the logs firmly in the Middle Pleistocene. Even with such precision, questions remain open. Were the logs part of a long tradition of woodworking now lost to decay? Or are they the product of a rare innovation that appeared, was used, and then forgotten? Without other surviving examples, it is impossible to say. What is clear is that this preservation has allowed us to glimpse a kind of behavior that was likely widespread but rarely recorded, the deliberate crafting of wooden structures to serve human needs. Today, the Kalambo River still lays down sediments in its flood season, still sealing away bits of the present for future discovery, perhaps far in the future. Other hands will uncover traces of our own constructions, as changed and weathered as these logs are now. For now, the jointed timbers rest in controlled storage, their form documented in photographs and 3D scans. Their survival is fragile, but their story endures, a record of both human skill and the patient work of the river that kept them safe for nearly 500,000 years. The question of who built the Kalambo structure leads far beyond the riverbank. The date, 476,000 years ago, rules out Homo sapiens, who will not appear for more than 200,000 years. Instead, attention turns to an earlier lineage, Homo heidelbergensis. This species is known from fossils across Africa, Europe, and Western Asia. Their remains show large, robust bodies, well-muscled, suited for endurance in varied environments. Their skulls are long and low, with prominent brow ridges and large brain cases, averaging slightly smaller than those of modern humans, but still within the range for complex thought. In Africa, Homo heidelbergensis represents a key stage in human evolution. They descend from earlier species such as Homo erectus, yet they also share features with later forms, including our own. Some researchers see them as a common ancestor of both Homo sapiens in Africa and Neanderthals in Eurasia. The archaeological record of this species is marked by the Acheulean tool tradition, large bifacial hand axes and cleavers shaped with care. But evidence from Kalambo hints at abilities that go beyond stone shaping. Here, they have not only cut wood, but fitted it into a form requiring foresight and planning. We cannot know the names or languages of the builders. If they spoke, their communication might have been more limited than ours, yet capable of conveying complex instructions, how to cut, where to place, when to adjust. The making of the joint likely involved more than one person, one holding, one cutting, perhaps others gathering and preparing materials. Life along the Kalambo River for Homo heidelbergensis would have been structured by the rhythm of resources. Groups may have numbered between 20 and 50 individuals, moving seasonally to follow game and harvest plants. They may have returned to favoured sites year after year, maintaining knowledge of where to find water, shelter, and useful materials. Hunting would have focused on medium to large game, antelope, zebra, perhaps even young elephants. Fishing and plant gathering would supplement the diet, with seasonal fruits and tubers filling gaps when hunting was less successful. Stone tools served all these activities, but the skill to make and maintain them had to be learned through repeated practice. The builders were likely adept at reading their environment. Tracks in the mud, changes in bird calls, the smell of rain on the wind, all offered clues to what was coming. Placing a structure in the right spot on the riverbank would require such awareness, close enough for access, far enough to avoid destruction in the next flood. The making of the notch itself suggests cognitive skills that parallel those of later humans. It involves sequencing, the ability to envision steps in order and follow them through. It involves abstraction, seeing the relationship between shapes before they physically exist. And it involves memory, holding the plan in mind while executing it with the tools at hand. From a broader evolutionary view, such abilities are essential for the eventual development of more complex technologies. Long before metalworking, long before permanent villages, humans were already experimenting with ways to shape their surroundings in durable ways. Yet there is a mystery. If Homo heidelbergensis could build such a structure here, why is there so little evidence of similar works elsewhere? One answer may be preservation. Wood decays quickly, and most traces would have vanished long ago. Another may be circumstance. Perhaps such constructions were useful only in certain environments, like this riverbank, and thus were rare in the overall record. Fossil and genetic evidence suggests that Homo heidelbergensis in Africa eventually gave rise to Homo sapiens, while their Eurasian relatives became Neanderthals and Denisovans. If so, the skills shown at Kalambo may be part of the shared inheritance passed down to all three lineages. In that sense, the notch in the log is not just the work of a single moment, but a thread woven into the broader fabric of human history. At the planetary scale, the time of Homo heidelbergensis spans multiple glacial cycles. Ice sheets in the north advance and retreat, altering sea levels by tens of meters. Rainfall belts shift, turning grasslands into deserts and deserts into grasslands. In such a world, adaptability is the key to survival. And adaptability includes the ability to alter one's surroundings in small but significant ways. Standing at the Kalambo site today, one can imagine these earlier humans moving along the bank, carrying tools, shaping wood, tending to daily tasks. They would not have thought of themselves as making history, yet their work remains, preserved by chance, offering a rare meeting point between the deep past and the present. The notch and the log, fitted together so long ago, tell us that the capacity for planned construction, for shaping materials to meet a vision, is far older than our species itself. The Kalambo River Valley is not only a place of water and shelter, but of food in many forms. The surrounding woodlands and open grasslands offer a varied diet for the people who once lived here. Animal bones recovered from the site hint at hunting and butchery. Charred plant remains, though rare, suggest gathering and cooking. Large grazers move through the grasslands in seasonal cycles. Antelope, zebra, and perhaps even buffalo. Hunting them requires coordination. Groups can drive animals toward natural barriers or toward the edge of the river where movement is restricted. Once an animal is brought down, stone tools are used to skin it, cut muscle from bone, and break bones for marrow. Closer to the water, fishing provides a reliable source of protein. Nets and spears made of wood would have been ideal, though they do not survive in the archaeological record here. In shallow channels, fish can be trapped with woven barriers of reeds, a technique that leaves no lasting trace but would have been effective for generations. Plant foods are just as important. Edible tubers can be dug from the damp ground with sharpened sticks. Fruits from ripening trees are gathered in season, while seeds and nuts can be stored for later. Some plants require processing, pounding, soaking, or roasting to make them edible or to remove toxins. Evidence from similar sites suggests that fire was part of daily life. At Kalambo, fragments of burned wood and charred seeds hint at hearths. Though the preservation of such features in waterlogged soil is poor, fire provides not only warmth and cooking, but also a means to keep insects at bay and to process materials like wood and fiber. The diet here would have been varied and flexible, changing with the seasons and the needs of the group. In wet months, fish and aquatic plants might dominate. In dry months, hunting and the gathering of stored seeds could take precedence. Such diversity is a form of resilience. When one food source is scarce, another can take its place. This adaptability is mirrored in the structure on the bank, a sign that people here were willing to invest in solutions that made their environment more usable. The river is also a corridor for animals. Elephants may pass along its banks, stripping branches from trees. Crocodiles bask on the mud flats, retreating into the water at the slightest disturbance. Birds feed in the shallows, while others nest in the reeds. Each species is part of the larger system, influencing the movement of others, including humans. Some resources would have been valued beyond their immediate use. Certain woods may have been preferred for tools or structures because of their hardness or resistance to rot. Reeds and grasses could be used for weaving mats or baskets, which in turn help in carrying food or processing it. The Kalambo site sits at a convergence of ecosystems: woodland, grassland, and riverine. This overlap creates an abundance of species, and with them, opportunities for varied subsistence. It also means that human activity here could leave a stronger mark, as repeated visits draw on the same patches of land and water. From a planetary perspective, this variety is shaped by the climate of the Middle Pleistocene. Even with glacial cycles altering conditions far away, Central Africa retains zones of stability where rivers like the Kalambo maintain their flow. Such zones may have been crucial refuges for human populations during harsher phases of climate change. The foods taken from this land also carry knowledge. Knowing when and where to find certain plants, which animals are most vulnerable at which times, and how to prepare each type of food safely. These are skills passed down as carefully as toolmaking. The structure on the bank, whether platform, walkway, or frame, fits into this picture as part of a wider strategy of living with the river. It may have made food processing easier, provided a stable space for storage, or allowed safer access to fishing spots. Its existence speaks of a group that understood how to combine natural abundance with practical innovation. Today, the river still offers much the same variety of life. Local communities fish its waters, gather reeds from its edges, and farm in the fertile soils nearby. The continuity across 500,000 years is striking. Though the people have changed, the river's role as a source of life remains. The logs from Kalambo, lying quiet in their conservation space, carry that continuity within them. They are not just evidence of construction, they are part of a living landscape that has supported human life for longer than our own species has existed. Before the discovery at Kalambo, most of what archaeologists knew about early woodworking came from a small set of finds. Wooden spears from Schöningen in Germany, dated to around 300,000 years ago. Fire-hardened points from sites in Africa and Europe, digging sticks from later prehistoric layers. These artifacts showed that early humans could shape wood into tools, implements designed for hunting, gathering, or processing food. But they were all portable objects. They could be made, used, and discarded within days or weeks. None hinted at the construction of fixed, stable wooden structures. The Kalambo logs change that. They demonstrate that woodworking at this time was not limited to simple, handheld tools. Here is evidence for joinery, the deliberate shaping of wood so that separate pieces could be locked together in a stable form. This is a leap in complexity. In tool-making, a piece of wood or stone can be assessed and shaped as it is used. Mistakes can be corrected with minimal loss of effort. In joinery, the relationship between parts must be imagined in advance. If one cut is wrong, the entire fitting may fail. This requires planning that extends beyond the immediate moment. It involves envisioning the structure as a whole, a mental map of how pieces will meet, how forces will be distributed, and how the finished object will serve its purpose. For decades, archaeologists assumed that such thinking emerged later. With Homo sapiens or Neanderthals, Kalambo pushes that timeline back. If the builders were Homo heidelbergensis, as seems likely, then the cognitive foundations for construction were in place hundreds of thousands of years earlier than thought. This insight has wider implications. It suggests that perishable structures, platforms, walkways, even basic shelters, may have been far more common in deep prehistory than the archaeological record reveals. Their absence is due not to rarity of construction, but to the rapid decay of wood in most environments. The surviving joint at Kalambo is thus a rare survivor from a much larger and mostly invisible tradition. It forces a rethinking of what early human sites may once have contained. Where we see only stone tools and animal bones today, there may once have been complex arrangements of wood, fiber, and other organic materials now lost. In other words, the archaeological record is biased toward what lasts, and what lasts is not always what was most important in daily life. From a planetary perspective, the techniques used at Kalambo are part of a broader pattern seen in many species, the ability to shape the environment to meet specific needs. Beavers fell trees to make dams. Birds weave nests from twigs and grass. But among primates, such permanent alteration of the environment is rare. Humans, even in their earlier forms, took this ability further, creating forms that were not only functional but planned. The rarity of preserved evidence means that each example gains enormous significance. The notch and crosspiece at Kalambo are not just artifacts, they are a demonstration of capability. They show that by 500,000 years ago, humans could think in terms of connected parts, stable structures, and extended use. Still, there are mysteries. We do not know how widespread such skills were. Were they learned by most individuals in a group, or practiced by a few specialists? Were they passed between groups through observation, or rediscovered independently in different places? It is also unclear whether woodworking of this kind marked a permanent shift in behavior, or if it appeared and disappeared in response to local needs. Perhaps in some environments, fixed structures were worth the investment, while in others they were unnecessary. What is certain is that Kalambo broadens the scope of what archaeologists must consider when interpreting early sites. It reminds us that much of the story of human technology is hidden in materials that rarely survive. When the logs were lifted from the ground, their surfaces still carried the traces of work, the overlapping cuts, the flattened surfaces, the meeting point where one piece fitted into the other. In those traces lies the direct evidence of planning and execution, a moment when the builder's vision took physical form. 500,000 years later, we can see that vision still. It stands as proof that the capacity for complex construction is not the invention of our own species, but a deeper inheritance carried forward through time. The ground where the Kalambo structure lay is more than just soil. It is a layered archive of change, built grain by grain over nearly 500,000 years. Each layer records a moment, a flood, a dry spell, a season rich in vegetation, a time of erosion. Archaeologists read these layers as a geologist reads rock strata. Coarse sands mark high-energy floods when the river ran fast and deep. Fine silts signal calmer waters when the current slowed, and sediment settled gently to the bottom. Thin lenses of darker material often contain traces of organic matter, fragments of plants, seeds, and sometimes charcoal. The layer that held the logs is one of these calmer deposit. It formed when the river's flow was steady, and fine sediment could accumulate without being swept away. This gentle burial helped preserve the wood. Within these sediments are clues to larger climatic shifts. Pollen grains, almost invisible to the eye, survive for hundreds of thousands of years in such conditions. Their shapes identify the plants that grew nearby, trees from moist forests, grasses from open savannas, shrubs from transitional zones. The pollen record at Kalambo shows changes in vegetation over time. Some layers point to wetter, more forested conditions. Others show a shift toward grassland dominance, reflecting drier intervals. These changes align with known cycles of global climate during the Middle Pleistocene. The world at this time is shaped by glacial rhythms. Over tens of thousands of years, ice sheets grow and retreat in the higher latitudes. When glaciers expand, global sea levels drop and rainfall patterns shift. Some regions become more arid, others wetter, depending on the position of atmospheric circulation belts. In Central Africa, the Kalambo River Valley experiences these shifts as alternating phases. During wetter periods, the river swells, forests spread, and resources become abundant. During drier periods, grasslands extend, the river contracts, and resources become more scattered. The survival of human groups here depends on adapting to these changes. They adjust their movements, their hunting strategies, and their gathering practices to match the shifting landscape. The wooden structure may have been built in one of the wetter phases, when timber was abundant and the river's flow more predictable. From a planetary viewpoint, the sediment layers at Kalambo are part of a network of climate records scattered across the globe. Ice cores from Antarctica, deep-sea sediments from the Atlantic, speleothems from caves in Asia. Each record reflects the same underlying cycles, but each tells the story in its own local way. At Kalambo, The story is written in river mud. It tells of a place that has never been static, where stability is always temporary, and where human presence has been shaped by water's constant motion. These layers also carry the marks of animals, footprints, though rare, sometimes leave faint impressions that are later filled and preserved. Gnawed wood and chewed plant stems can reveal which species were present and in what numbers. The layers above the logs contain no further wooden constructions. This may be coincidence, or it may reflect a shift in how the riverbank was used. Perhaps the channel moved, or perhaps later visits did not require the same kind of structure. The preservation of this single join reminds us that most evidence of early human construction has been lost, not because it never existed, but because it was made from materials that return quickly to the earth. In the modern excavation trench, each layer is recorded before it is removed. Photographs, drawings, and sediment samples preserve the context, allowing future study long after the trench has been backfilled. The logs themselves are only part of the record. The sediments that held them are just as important for understanding the conditions in which they were made and preserved. The river still deposits sediment today, building new layers that, given enough time, could bury traces of our own constructions. In this way, the Kalambo site is both a window into the past and a mirror of the processes still at work. For the humans who lived here in the Middle Pleistocene, the river's changes were simply part of life. They could not see the half-million-year record we see now, but their choices, where to camp, where to build, where to cut wood, were guided by patterns they observed in their own time. The logs, locked together in a careful join, are a single moment from that long, shifting story, a point where human intention met the slow work of the river, and both left their mark in the same layer of earth. In the half-million-year-old world of the Kalambo River, the local landscape is only one piece of a much larger picture. Far to the north, ice sheets cover wide areas of Europe and North America. They grow during glacial phases, locking away vast volumes of water in frozen form. The effect is global. Sea levels drop by tens of meters, coastlines extend outward, and entire continental shelves lie exposed to the air. These changes ripple southward. Rainfall patterns shift as atmospheric circulation adjusts to the presence of the ice. Some parts of Africa receive more rain, others far less. Rivers expand or contract in response, feeding or starving the wetlands that sustain wildlife and human life alike. During wetter intervals, the Kalambo River flows steadily year-round, drawing animals from the surrounding region. Woodland thickens, offering shade and abundant plant foods. In such times, human groups may linger here for extended periods, relying on the predictable abundance of the valley. In drier phases, the river still flows, fed by sources in higher ground, but the surrounding woodland thins, grassland species dominate, and some animals move away to follow shrinking water sources. Humans may respond by increasing mobility, shifting between resource patches across larger territories. The global climate cycles of the Middle Pleistocene are slow by human reckoning, unfolding over tens of thousands of years. But within each cycle, smaller variations occur: years of heavier rain, years of scarcity. These short-term changes require constant awareness and flexibility. From a planetary perspective, the Kalambo site is one of many refugees across Africa where life endures through both wet and dry phases. Other such refuges lie along major rivers near permanent lakes, or in areas where underground springs feed surface water. In these places, humans and wildlife alike find shelter from the harsher swings of climate elsewhere. The preservation of the wooden structure here owes itself in part to these climatic patterns. A relatively stable stretch of years may have allowed the logs to remain in place long enough to be buried gently by fine sediments. In more turbulent phases, floods might have torn them apart before they could be preserved. The global picture also includes movements of other human populations. While Homo heidelbergensis occupies much of Africa and parts of Eurasia, other hominin lineages adapt to their own environments, early Neanderthals in Europe, perhaps Denisovan populations in Asia. Though separated by distance, they live within the same cycles of climate, shaped by the same planetary forces. We do not know whether the skills shown at Kalambo existed in other regions at the same time. The archaeological record is too fragmentary to draw certain boundaries. But the logic of environmental adaptation suggests that wherever timber and tools came together, some form of wooden construction was possible. The lowering of sea levels during glacial phases also creates land bridges between regions. These open new pathways for animals and humans alike. Across the millennia, such changes may have allowed the spread of both populations and ideas, though in the Middle Pleistocene, these processes unfold slowly, over many generations. Even in this interconnected world, the Kalambo River remains a distinct place, with its own cycles and resources, its waterfall, its fertile terraces, its access to both woodland and open land, all make it a focal point for life in the region. From the perspective of the builders, the world beyond the horizon is unknown. Their mental map is local, paths between seasonal camps, hunting grounds, and water sources. Yet they live within patterns that span continents, driven by the tilt of the earth, the pull of the moon, and the shifting of the oceans. In this way, the jointed logs are part of a planetary story. They were shaped by hands responding to immediate needs, but those needs arose within the larger forces of ice and water, heat and cold, that have always moved across the earth. The Kalambo structure, preserved against the odds, is a record not just of human skill, but of the moment in Earth's long climate cycles when it came into being, a brief stillness in the flow of time before the next shift began. The purpose of the Kalambo structure remains uncertain. Its form, two logs joined with a notch, is clear enough. But the reason it was made is still open to interpretation. One possibility is that it formed the foundation of a raised platform. Such a platform could keep stored materials above damp ground, safe from pooling water after rain. It might also serve as a workspace, where tasks like food preparation, fiber weaving, or tool making could be done without standing in mud. Another idea is that it was part of a walkway. In a floodplain, the ground near the river can be unstable, soft clays that cling to the feet, channels that shift unexpectedly. A sequence of joined logs might create a stable route between dry ground and the water's edge, useful for fishing or crossing a muddy stretch. A third suggestion is that the joint anchored a vertical element, such as a post, and this could support a rack for drying fish or meat, or perhaps hold a light framework for a temporary shelter. The notch would keep the post steady and resist movement from wind or water. The challenge in choosing between these possibilities is the absence of surrounding evidence. No clear traces of other timbers, post holes, or additional joints were found in the same layer. It is possible that more of the structure once existed but was removed or decayed before burial. Archaeology often works within such uncertainty. The material record is incomplete, and interpretation must balance what is preserved with what is reasonable for the time and place. In the case of Kalambo, the very survival of the joint is remarkable, and it may represent only a fragment of a larger, more complex arrangement. Theories about its use must also consider the broader habits of the people who made it. If the builders were largely mobile, a fixed structure suggests either a special-purpose construction or a site they returned to regularly. If they stayed for longer periods, the structure might be part of a cluster of features that together made the site more habitable. Ethnographic parallels from later periods show that small wooden platforms or walkways are common in wetland environments worldwide. They are simple to build, effective in use, and easily repaired or replaced. Yet their presence in the archaeological record depends almost entirely on unusual preservation conditions. Another layer of mystery lies in whether the construction was intended for human use alone. It could also have been designed to influence the movement of animals, perhaps as part of a trap or to direct fish into a narrow channel. Such uses leave even fewer traces, as the organic materials involved are lost over time. From a planetary scale perspective, the uncertainty here is a reminder of the limits of our vision into the past. We can trace climate shifts and sediment layers with precision. We can identify species of wood and the angles of tool marks. But the specific purpose, the moment-to-moment reasoning of the builders, remains locked in the deep past. Some researchers suggest that the value of the find is less in what it tells us about a single object, and more in what it reveals about capability. The ability to shape two large pieces of wood so that they fit together in a stable way implies an understanding of cause and effect, of materials, and of planning ahead, whether for a platform, a walkway, or a rack. Those abilities are the same. The Kalambo join is thus a signpost, a point on the long path of human technological development where we can see clearly that constructional thinking was already present. 500,000 years later, we stand at the edge of the excavation, looking down into the soil where the logs once lay. The questions remain unanswered, but the evidence is undeniable. Someone here, long before our species was born, imagined a shape in their mind and then made it real. The journey of the Kalambo logs from living trees to buried archaeological treasure spans seasons, floods, and geological time. Long before the excavation, the trees themselves stood rooted in the valley's soil. They grew in the moist conditions of the riparian forest, drawing water from the river's edge, their rings recording years of steady growth and occasional stress. At some point, they were selected by human hands. The choice was not random. For a notch-and-fit join, the wood needed to be strong, straight, and free from deep cracks or rot. Perhaps the builders tested the trunks by striking them or by cutting small chips to check their quality. Felling the trees without metal tools required patience. Repeated blows from a heavy stone tool would chip away the fibers at the base, each cut deepening the groove. The final break might come with a push, a twist, or by using the tree's own weight to topple it. Once on the ground, the logs had to be stripped of branches and bark. Some of the bark might be kept for binding, but for the join, clean wood was needed. The notch would be cut slowly, removing thin layers of wood until the desired shape and depth were reached. The second log, the crosspiece, was prepared in much the same way, smoothed where it would meet the notch. The fitting required adjustment, cutting, checking, and recutting until the two pieces locked together without rocking or twisting. When the structure was complete, it was placed at the chosen spot on the bank. For however long it stood, it served its purpose, whether as a platform, a walkway section, or part of a frame. Around it, daily life continued. Fishing in the shallows, butchering game, gathering plant foods, making tools. In time, the structure ceased to be used. It may have been replaced, dismantled, or simply abandoned. Seasonal floods could have shifted it slightly or covered it in silt. Eventually, a larger flood brought a layer of fine sediment that sealed the joint entirely. This was the beginning of its long burial. Year after year, the river added more layers above it, sands from fast floods, silts from calmer times, and occasional dark bands rich in plant matter. The logs became part of the river terrace, held in place by the weight of the overlying deposits. As centuries became millennia, the climate shifted many times. Glacial cycles altered the flow of water and the spread of vegetation. Yet the joint remained hidden, protected by the very processes that could have destroyed it. By the time the first modern humans appeared in Africa, the Kalambo logs had already been buried for more than 200,000 years. By the time the first cities rose, they had lain in place for nearly 500,000. When archaeologists uncovered them, the marks of those long processes were still visible. The wood was darkened by minerals, heavy with water, its fibers softened by age but still holding the shape given to them by human tools. The join was as clear as the day it was made. The preservation of such an object is rare not only because of decay, but because of the sheer number of events it must survive: floods, erosion, animal disturbance, and the constant movement of the Earth's surface. That the Kalambo joint endured is as much a story of geological fortune as it is of human skill. From a planetary perspective, its journey mirrors the cycles that shape all landscapes. Materials move from forest to river, from river to floodplain, from floodplain to buried layer. Over time, they may be lifted again by erosion, exposed once more to the air. The Kalambo structure's path was interrupted by us, by human curiosity, excavation, and study. It might otherwise have remained buried until the river cut a new channel through its terrace centuries from now. Now, in conservation storage, the logs rest in a new kind of stillness. They have passed from living trees to human tools, from functional structure to buried relic, and now to preserved artifact. Their story continues, not in daily use, but in the knowledge they carry of a time before our own. 500,000 years after the jointed logs were placed on the bank of the Kalambo River, they emerge again into the light. Their surface is softened by time, their color deepened by minerals, but their form remains. Two pieces fitted with care, still locked together. They are among the oldest surviving wooden constructions in the world. In that status lies their significance, a direct link to human skill long before Homo sapiens existed. The join is more than a technical detail. It is a record of thought, of planning, of transforming raw material into something that did not exist before. Such traces are rare not because they were rare in life, but because wood seldom survives. For every structure that is preserved, countless others have vanished without a mark in the archaeological record. The Kalambo logs are therefore both an example and a reminder, a visible fragment of a much larger hidden story. They also speak to the universality of problem-solving. Whether the joint was part of a platform, a walkway, or a rack, the need it addressed is familiar: to make a place safer, more stable, or more useful. That need and the skill to meet it are constants in human history. From the local view, the Kalambo River is a lifeline. It offers water, food, and raw materials. It draws people back again and again, shaping their movements and decisions. From the planetary view, It is one point in a vast network of rivers and refugees where early humans endured through cycles of climate and change. The joint in the logs captures both views at once. It is the product of immediate practical concern, but it is also part of the long arc of human adaptation. The study of the Kalambo structure will continue for years. Analysis of the wood will refine our understanding of the environment. Microscopic wear marks will tell us more about the tools used. Comparisons with other sites will help place it in the broader context of early technology. Yet, some questions will remain unanswered. We may never know exactly how long the structure stood, what else surrounded it, or how widely such skills were shared. The deep past often holds its secrets. What we do know is enough to shift the way we see early humans. They were not only tool users, not only hunters and gatherers. They were builders, able to shape their world in ways that lasted beyond the moment. From a planetary perspective, the joint's survival is a narrow thread through time. It endured through floods, climate shifts, and the slow work of sediment. It survived the arrival of our species, the spread of agriculture, the rise of cities, and the modern reshaping of landscapes. Now it rests in careful preservation, its form documented in detail. In museums and publications, it will stand as one of the earliest known works of human construction. It is a testament not only to the ingenuity of its makers, but to the processes of Earth itself that kept it safe until we were ready to find it. 500,000 years ago, someone stood by this river holding a stone tool, shaping wood to fit wood. They worked until the join was right, until the pieces held firm. They placed it in the bank and, for a time, used what they had made. Then they moved on. The river changed. The land shifted. The structure sank beneath the silt and waited. Now, in our time, it speaks again, quietly, but with a clarity that spans the ages. Far below the modern ground surface, a layer of ancient riverbank rests, sealed beneath centuries of silt. Here, on the banks of the Kalambo River in present-day Zambia, archaeologists dig slowly. Each trowel stroke exposes grains of compacted sediment, a mixture of sand, clay, and tiny pebbles pressed by time. The site lies close to the edge of a steep waterfall. The constant mist and the deep pool below have shaped this landscape for hundreds of thousands of years. Today the water flows over dark, polished rock. But in the deep past, the river's channels braided through a broad, flat floodplain. One day, as the excavation reaches a darker band of soil, the texture changes. Beneath the sediment, the archaeologists touch wood. Not fossilized, not charcoal, but real wood, fibrous and intact. They brush it clean with soft bristles, revealing the curve of a log. Another lies beside it, pressed into the ground in a deliberate alignment. Wood rarely survives this long. In open air, it decays in decades. Buried in most soils, it is broken down by bacteria and fungi. Here, though the conditions are unusual, the logs were sealed quickly by fine river sediments and saturated by water with low oxygen levels. Decomposition slowed almost to nothing. What emerges is extraordinary. 2 large logs, each over 1 meter long, are fitted together in a way not seen in fallen trees. One has a deep notch cut into it. The other lies within that notch, crossing at an angle. The edges are straight. The cuts are sharp. They are not the work of nature. Stone flakes are found nearby, their edges worn from cutting and scraping. These tools match the shape and polish expected from woodworking. Microscopic grooves in the log surface matched the striations left by stone tools. This is construction. Deliberate, planned, and precise. The dating is painstaking. Researchers use a technique called luminescence dating, measuring how long it has been since minerals in the surrounding sand were last exposed to sunlight. The result is staggering, around 476,000 years old. This is long before Homo sapiens emerges in Africa. The builders belong to an earlier human species, likely Homo heidelbergensis, a group known for their large brains, strong bodies, and adaptability. The discovery forces a pause. Until this moment, most evidence for ancient woodworking came from spears, digging sticks, and fire-hardened shafts, tools that could be made quickly and left behind. Here, however, is a fixed construction. It speaks of a place meant to last, at least for a season, perhaps longer. The Kalambo site had been known to archaeology for decades, but earlier excavations never reached this deep. The preservation was hidden, locked in the river terrace. It took a combination of renewed interest, improved dating methods, and careful excavation to bring these logs into view. Above the ancient layer, the modern riverbank teems with life. Bird calls echo across the water. Tall grasses bend with the wind. The falls send up a constant spray, just as they might have done 500,000 years ago. In that ancient time, the air would have been cooler and the river broader. Hippopotamus tracks may have pressed into the mud nearby. Elephant herds may have grazed the surrounding woodland. Small fires may have burned in sheltered clearings, smoke rising into the evening sky. The structure's exact function remains uncertain. It could have been the base of a raised platform, keeping goods dry in a floodplain. It might have been a walkway, allowing people to move across wet ground without sinking into mud. It might even have been part of a simple shelter frame. No matter the purpose, it required more than tool use. It required design, forethought, and a mental picture of the final form. Some researchers point to this as a sign that early humans were capable of reshaping their environment in lasting ways. Others caution that one structure does not reveal the full range of their abilities. The debate continues, quiet but steady, like the flow of the river itself. Above all, the find gives a rare glimpse into a world where almost everything was made from perishable materials: wood, fiber, hide, grass. Most of it has vanished without a trace. Here, preserved by chance and circumstance, is a fragment that endured. Beneath the riverbank, the logs rest as they have for nearly 500,000 years. The water moves past them now as it did then, carving, shifting, flowing toward the falls. The story they hold is silent, but in the quiet, it speaks. Long before the first Homo sapiens walks the earth, other human species moved through the landscapes of Africa. The year is not a year as we measure it, but a point in deep time, 476,000 years before the present. It is the Middle Pleistocene, a chapter in Earth's history marked by shifting climates and advancing glaciers far to the north. The builders of the Kalambo structure are not us. They belong to an earlier branch of our family tree, perhaps Homo heidelbergensis. Their skulls are large, with broad brows and powerful jaws. Their bodies are strong, adapted for endurance. They live in small groups, bound by cooperation and knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Homo heidelbergensis is known from sites across Africa, Europe, and Western Asia. They have already mastered the shaping of stone tools, hand axes with symmetrical edges, flakes chipped with precision. They hunt large game. They gather plant foods in season. They may control fire, though how consistently is still debated. By this time, these humans have roamed the continent for hundreds of thousands of years. Their range is vast. From the open savannas of East Africa to the river valleys of the south, they adapt to each environment's demands. The Kalambo River is one such place, a reliable source of water and food. The land around the river offers more than sustenance. It offers materials. Here grow tall trees with straight trunks and dense wood. Here are stones of quartzite and sandstone, weathered smooth by the current, ready for shaping into tools. Here are reeds and grasses that can be cut, twisted, and woven. To stand in this time is to feel the rhythm of the seasons more keenly than the hours of the day. When rains swell the river, fishing is plentiful. When the floodplain dries, grazing animals return and hunting becomes easier. At the edges of the woodland, tubers can be dug from the soil. This is the world in which the wooden structure is made. To shape wood in such a way requires planning. The log must be chosen, felled, stripped of branches. The notch must be cut to fit another log exactly. Stone tools must be sharpened, then used with controlled force to remove each sliver of wood. It is slow work, repeated until the shape is right. The choice to interlock logs is not accidental. It creates stability, a feature that serves no purpose in a temporary camp. Whatever this platform supported, it mattered enough to invest time and effort. The existence of this construction challenges an older view in archaeology. For decades, many assumed that early humans made only simple wooden tools, easily replaced and quickly abandoned. But the Kalambo find shows otherwise, that even before Homo sapiens, humans could envision and create more durable structures. Still, questions remain. Why here? Was this a favored camp, returned to season after season? Was the platform part of a larger arrangement of wooden works now lost to decay? Did it stand alone, a single useful object in a busy riverside space? The answers may never be certain. Much of the evidence that could explain its purpose has been erased by time. Wood rots, fibers disintegrate, bones dissolve in waterlogged soil. Only rare conditions, like those at Kalambo, preserve a direct link to the distant past. Beyond the site, the world is changing. To the north, ice sheets expand across Europe, locking vast amounts of water into frozen form. Sea levels drop. Rainfall patterns shift. Across Africa, some regions grow wetter, others drier, reshaping where animals and humans can live. These environmental changes are slow on a human scale, but relentless over centuries. A riverbank that supports a thriving group one century may become a dusty plain the next. Adaptability is survival. The humans of this age must read the land, its plants, its animal tracks, its waters, and respond in kind. One can imagine the builders moving along the river's edge, gathering branches for fire, stones for tools, reeds for binding. The sound of cutting wood carries softly through the trees. The river runs steady, its surface broken by fish and drifting leaves. Every action is practical, yet each mark left on the wood is also a trace of thought. 500,000 years later, the people who uncover these marks are of another species, our own. We look at them and see skill, planning, cooperation. We wonder at the lives that made them. The logs cannot tell us all, but they hold enough to bridge the distance of time. This is what survives: two fitted logs and shaped by hands older than our species, lying still in the quiet earth. Around them, sediment holds the story of climate, river flow, and human choice. Above them, the modern Kalambo River continues its long journey toward the falls. In the span of human history, the builder's world feels impossibly remote. Yet the marks on the wood are as clear as if they were cut yesterday. The past, in rare moments, reaches forward through the ground and touches the present. Far away, in the Middle Pleistocene landscape, the Kalambo River winds slowly through a wide, fertile plain. Its waters branch and weave, forming channels and pools that shift with each rainy season. The banks are lined with gallery forest, tall, leafy trees shading the water's edge. Beyond them, the land opens to grassland where herds move with the changing months. 476,000 years ago, this region sits at the crossroads of climate zones. Moist air from the equator meets drier winds from the south. Some years, the river swells until it spills into the surrounding lowlands. Other years, its channels run narrow, bordered by mud flats and reed beds. The Kalambo Falls already exist, their drop carving a deep plunge pool in the rock below. Mist rises in the warm air. The sound carries far, a constant rumble that may guide travelers along the river. This place is a landmark, one that endures through generations. The surrounding ecosystem is rich. Elephants browse on acacia branches. Hippopotamuses graze at night on the open plains, leaving deep tracks in the mud. Antelope and zebra graze the tall grass, followed at a distance by lions and hyenas. Crocodiles lie in the slow backwaters. Fish dart in the shadows of overhanging roots. For humans of this time, the river is both resource and boundary. It offers fresh water, food, and raw materials, but it also shapes movement through the land. Crossing it may require skill, timing, and caution. Staying near it means adapting to its floods and its shifting paths. The climate of the Middle Pleistocene is not fixed. Glacial cycles bring long periods of cooler, drier conditions to parts of Africa, broken by warmer, wetter intervals. The position of the river channels changes over centuries, altering where people can camp and gather resources. Sediment cores from the region show alternating layers of coarse flood deposits and fine, calm water silts, a record of these shifts. It is in one of these calmer intervals that the wooden structure is built. The logs come from nearby trees, likely felled with repeated stone strikes to weaken the base before pushing or twisting the trunk free. The notching suggests a clear choice of placement, a part of the bank that stays firm even in wetter months. Nearby, the ground holds the traces of other activities. Flakes of quartzite lie in small clusters, perhaps where tool-making once took place. Charred seeds hint at the controlled use of fire, though whether the fire was for cooking or warmth is uncertain. Animal bones, cracked and worn, suggest both hunting and scavenging. This place would have been more than a passing stop. Its richness in resources would encourage repeated visit, perhaps over many generations. Each return might see repairs or additions to wooden constructions, though most would not survive the millennia. The surviving logs we see today are rare survivors from a much larger cycle of building. using, and discarding. The broader world at this time is a patchwork of environments. Far to the north, ice sheets spread across Europe, lowering global sea levels. In parts of Africa, lakes shrink or vanish, while in others, wetlands expand. Animal ranges shift. With them, human groups adjust their seasonal paths. Kalambo lies in a zone of relative stability compared to more arid regions. Its permanent water draws life even in drier periods. From higher ground, the river's green ribbon is visible for many kilometers, a sign of food, shelter, and movement. To picture this landscape is to imagine not untouched wilderness, but a place shaped by repeated use. Trails form where feet pass season after season. Cut stumps mark where wood was taken. Shallow hearths mark where fires once burned. Though all but the wood has vanished, the rhythms of use are written into the land. The preservation of the logs owes itself to this particular setting. After use, they were likely buried quickly by silt during a flood. Over time, more layers pressed down, sealing them in a low-oxygen environment. Minerals from the surrounding sediments entered the wood slowly, hardening some fibers while leaving others intact. Today, when the excavators lift them free, they are heavy with water. They must be kept damp until conservation treatments can begin. Even in modern hands, the ancient wood remains fragile, a reminder of how easily such traces can be lost. The mystery of why these logs were joined in this way is matched by the rarity of their survival. In most of human prehistory, woodwork was invisible to archaeologists because it vanished completely. Kalambo changes that, offering a glimpse of skill and intent deep in our shared past. The river flows on as it did then. Its channels still shift, its banks still hold traces of life. But beneath the modern surface lies a record older than our species, a place where two logs, carefully fitted, have waited almost 500,000 years to be found. On the ancient bank, a scatter of stone tools lies in the soil. They are not random fragments, but the results of shaping and resharpening. The stones are local, quartzite from nearby outcrops, and sandstone smoothed by the river's current. Each has been struck with precision to remove thin flakes, leaving sharp edges for cutting. In the Middle Pleistocene, these tools are the universal currency of survival. With them, humans butcher animals, scrape hides, dig for tubers, and shape wood. The hand axe is common here, almond-shaped, with edges sharpened on both sides. Some are larger and heavier for chopping, others finer for detailed work. The tools at Kalambo carry microscopic traces of their use. Under magnification, fine striations run along their edges, the signature of cutting into wood grain. Some edges are polished smooth in patches, as repeated strokes against plant fibers wear the stone. These marks confirm what the logs themselves suggest: deliberate woodworking, not chance contact. To cut a notch into a log requires more than strength. It demands repeated, controlled blows to remove material evenly. It means turning the log, adjusting position, striking from different angles. The maker must picture the final shape before the work is complete.
Nearby, smaller flakes may have been used as knives or scrapers. Their edges, fresh and sharp, could slice through bark or shave away thin layers of wood. In an age without metal, the hardness of stone is the only means to alter the shape of trees.
The connection between stone and wood is constant. Stone allows wood to take new forms, and wood in turn expands the range of human possibility as tools, shelters, carrying frames, and more. This partnership shapes human adaptation in countless unseen ways. At Kalambo, the fitted logs are the visible outcome of this relationship, but they are also part of a wider technological system. Other wooden works, now lost, would have been present. Spears for hunting, digging sticks for gathering, stakes for trapping fish. Even simple branch poles could serve as barriers or supports. The presence of these tools also reveals something about the rhythm of life here. Toolmaking is not a rare event, but an ongoing process. Edges dull and break. Flakes are struck to renew them. Stone cores are carried and reduced bit by bit. Some tools may travel far from their original source. Others are made and discarded within a day. The stone scatter near the logs marks one of the many points where activity once clustered along the riverbank. The durability of stone means it outlasts almost all other evidence of these people's lives. But here, in rare balance, stone and wood survive together, allowing a fuller picture of their interaction. Beyond the practical, the skill with which tools are made speaks to knowledge held in memory. The technique for shaping a hand axe is not reinvented each time. It is taught, repeated, refined. This passing of skill links generations, carrying forward both method and understanding. In the wider world of the Middle Pleistocene, similar tools are found across vast distances. From southern Africa to Europe, the Acheulean tradition, named for its characteristic hand axes, endures for hundreds of thousands of years. Its persistence suggests a stability in both technology and the way of life it supports. The Kalambo logs, however, point to something beyond the typical scope of Acheulean tool use. They show that woodworking could extend into structural construction, a step toward more permanent modification of the environment. While stone tools change little over long spans, the uses to which they are put may vary widely, shaped by local needs and opportunities. The link between stone and wood is mirrored in the link between river and settlement. A reliable water source allows repeated occupation, which in turn supports more complex works. At Kalambo, the river provides both the materials and the reason to stay. From a planetary view, these activities occur during a cooler phase in Earth's climate. Glaciers in the north lock away water, lowering sea levels and shifting rainfall belts. Yet in this part of Africa, the river's flow remains steady enough to sustain a diverse ecosystem. The people who work these tools and shape these logs are part of that system, and they take from it what they need, but their traces are light compared to the slow forces shaping the land. Over centuries, floods bury their work, preserving a few by chance. The rest is carried away by water, wind, and time. In the present, the excavated tools are carefully recorded, their edges drawn and photographed. Each flake's position is mapped to understand the pattern of activity. Together, they form a record of how humans here worked, moved, and used the land. The fitted logs remain the central puzzle, but without the stone tools beside them, their story would be incomplete. It is the partnership of materials, the sharpness of stone, the versatility of wood, that defines much of human history. At Kalambo, that partnership is frozen in a moment nearly 500,000 years old. The tools still cut in their way, carving a window into a vanished world. Two large logs lie where they were placed nearly 500,000 years ago. One rests flat, the other set across it, locked neatly into a carved notch. The join is unmistakable. It is the work of human hands, not windfall, not the random pressure of flood debris. The notch is clean, with edges that run straight before curving to meet the inner cut. Its depth is consistent, wide enough to seat the second log firmly in place. The fit is close, suggesting the builder tested the alignment, adjusted the cut, then tested again. In nature, wood does not fall into such order. Branches break at uneven angles. Logs press against one another loosely, shifting with the current. Here, by contrast, is intention. The logs are joined so they will not move, resisting both the tug of water and the settling of soil. The method reveals more than just skill with tools. It shows spatial awareness. The builder imagined the structure before completing it, understood how one element would bear on the other. The join adds strength, stability, and a level surface above the ground. In the modern study of woodworking, notching is a fundamental technique. It appears in shelters, fences, walkways, and platforms. The Kalambo join is one of the earliest known examples in the archaeological record, and the oldest surviving wooden joint of its kind. What the joint supported is unknown. One idea is that it formed part of a raised platform, lifting people or goods above damp ground. Another is that it anchored a walkway across a muddy channel. A third is that it served as the base of a frame, perhaps for shelter or storage. Each possibility hints at different behaviors. A platform implies longer stays at the site, with structures maintained over time. A walkway suggests repeated movement across a specific path. A frame points to organized storage or the protection of valuable resources. Whatever the purpose, the joint means that these early humans were not only reacting to their environment, they were modifying it in ways that endured beyond a single day's need. This capacity is a turning point in human history. The shift from using natural features as found to shaping them into new forms. The tools needed for such a join were not specialized, but the technique required practice. A heavy stone axe-like tool could score and chip the wood. A lighter flake could smooth and refine the cut. The final fitting depended on experience. Too shallow, and the log would not seat. Too deep, and it would wobble. In the sediment around the log, archaeologists find small wood fragments, split and curled, likely the byproducts of shaping. These slivers have survived only because they were buried quickly in wet sand. They are as rare as the logs themselves, carrying the fine striations of stone tool marks. The very survival of the joint is a geological accident. After its use, a flood may have laid down a thick layer of silt, sealing it from oxygen and decay. Season after season, more layers built above it until it lay far below the surface we walk on today. From a global perspective, the making of such a join occurs at a time when human populations are scattered and small. Each group may number only a few dozen individuals. Territories are large, but the pace of movement is slow, tied to the cycles of water, plants, and animals. In this context, the knowledge of woodworking must be preserved carefully. It cannot be written down. It cannot be stored in objects alone. It lives in the hands and minds of those who practice it, passed directly from one generation to the next. The join at Kalambo is a trace of that chain of teaching. It shows that the concept of connecting two pieces of wood in a stable way was known, understood, and executed with care. On the scale of planetary processes, the making of the join is almost invisible. Rivers shift courses, ice sheets grow and retreat, coastlines change shape. Yet here is a point where human thought leaves a mark. small in scale, but lasting through the ages. When the archaeologists lift the logs from the ground, the joint is still intact, even waterlogged and fragile. The cut is clear. It connects us to a moment in the deep past when someone stood on this same riverbank, tools in hand, shaping wood to fit wood. In that moment, the river runs behind them. The forest shades their work, and the join takes form. A quiet piece of engineering, 500,000 years before the present.